Hello footy fans, welcome to another episode of Bev's Footy Show for the season of 2017. Let's not muck around, let's get straight into having a look at the episode agenda. I'm going to start the show by having a look back at the round 23 results. The final round of the home and away season was an absolute cracker, lots of excitement and lots of drama as well, especially towards the end. So I'll be having a look at the round 23 results to start off the show. I'm then going to have a final look at the AFL ladder. The final positions of 2017 have been finalised. Then going to get into a final stats wrap-up for the season of 2017. And then instead of the 5 talking points of the week this week, I'm actually going to mix things up and give you my season ratings for all bottom 10 clubs. So looking forward to that. And then coming up after that is what's on during the bye. Of course, no footy to speak about this week with a week off before the finals. Of course, I'll be talking about week 1 of the finals next week, but instead I'll be talking you through what's on during the bye, because there is a few good events on during the bye weekend. So let's get straight into having a look at the round 23 results. So the final round of the home and away season kicked off on Friday night at Etihad Stadium between Hawthorn and the Western Bulldogs. This game was a pretty intense game in the first half. It slowed down in the second half a little bit. Hawthorn were able to record the win, winning 15-9-99 to the Western Bulldogs 13-12-90 in front of just over 48,000 at Etihad Stadium. This game was this game will be remembered more so for the 3 or 4 legends that were sent off in style. Of course, Matthew Boyd, Robert Murphy, Luke Hodge and Josh Gibson all announcing their retirement before this game, and they were all sent off in fitting style, especially Luke Hodge, Matthew Boyd and Robert Murphy, who were all carried from the ground. It was just beautiful scenes, emotional scenes. It's going to be a really different year without them next season. Certainly, that is certainly correct, no doubt about that. Now, the Dogs were playing to keep their final chances alive, but unfortunately couldn't receive the win, and as a result they will not be playing finals in 2017, become the first team since Hawthorn in 2009 to win the grand final and then miss out on the finals the next year. Hawthorn have had a sensational finish to the season. Of course, the first half was absolutely brutal, but the second half, you got to give praise to Alistair Clarkson, who is the best coach in the league, most certainly. Saturday there were 5 games. The first one was at the MCG between Collingwood and Melbourne. The D's hadn't really sealed up their top 8 chances. They needed to win this to actually seal up a place in the top 8. However, expectations got to them. Collingwood just came out of the blocks and really smashed Melbourne, and in the end Collingwood got the win. It was a good win for them, Collingwood. Probably their best win of season 2017, to be honest. It's the best game I've seen from them this year, I reckon. They won 14-15-99, defeated Melbourne 12-11-83 in front of 51,223 people at the MCG. Melbourne was still in the top 8. However, they had to rely on a few results to actually not get knocked out of the top 8 at the end of this round, and I'll speak about that more in just a moment. But the other Saturday afternoon game was at the Gabba. The Brisbane Lions and North Melbourne trying to win to avoid the wooden spoon. North Melbourne surprisingly won this game pretty convincingly. The Brisbane Lions 11-13-79, defeated by North Melbourne 19-16-130 at the Gabba. I thought Brisbane would be the winners of this match, but I was proven wrong, and as a result the Lions finish in that wooden spoon position, but they've still had a great year. And North Melbourne, well, we knew they weren't going to make the finals, but there has been some positives that come out of their season as well as the negatives. The Saturday twilight match was at the SCG between the Sydney Swans and also Carlton. The Blues stuck with the Swans for a while, but the Swans were too good in the end. 10. Buddy Franklin kicked 10 goals, which we'll see shortly how that affects the Coleman medal race, because well, he was behind Josh Kennedy and the rest of them coming into this round, so 10 goals will do him all the wonders. The final score, the Sydney Swans 21-12, 138, defeated Colton 8-9, 57 in front of just under 39,000 at the Sydney Cricket Ground. 2 Saturday night games, the first one at Simmons Stadium. Geelong really staked their claims heading into the finals as a real premiership contender. I know there's been a few people who have undervalued and counted out Geelong to win the flag, but they can definitely win the flag, especially with a win like this. The final score, Geelong 15-13, 103, defeating the GWS Giants, who are still in the mix, 8-11, 59 in front of just over 30,000 at the new developed Simmons Stadium, who won't be hosting finals in the season of 2017. It's fair to say that. The other Saturday night game was an absolute shocker. The Port Adelaide Football Club really did dominate the Gold Coast Suns. We know their year has been pretty poor, and as a result, Port Adelaide won 20-15, 135 to the Gold Coast Suns, 3-2-20 in front of just over 34,000 at Adelaide Oval. Some real interesting stats to come out of this game. The Gold Coast Suns' final score of 3-2-20 is the lowest score in club history. In fact, it's the lowest score conceded by Port Adelaide in the AFL, so that is remarkable. Also, the Gold Coast final tally of only five scoring shots against Port Adelaide was the fewest in a game by any team since round 17, 1966. And another one to come out of this game, the Gold Coast Suns score of 3-2-20 is the lowest score in any match since Fremantle 1-7-13 in round 15, 2009. So a few stats and real kind of poor stats from a Gold Coast Suns point of view to come out of this game. They're in a lot of trouble, and it's going to be very interesting to see how next season goes, because they're on a knife edge at the moment. 3 Sunday games. It was a real exciting Sunday. Essendon claimed their top 8 spot by winning against the Dockers, although Fremantle, to their credit, took it up to the Bombers. The final score, the Bombers 16-11, 107, defeated Fremantle 14-8, 92 in front of 42,665 at Etihad Stadium. The mid-Sunday afternoon game, where Richmond put across against St Kilda's final chances, winning 19-8, 122, defeated St Kilda 12-9, 81 in front of 69,104 at the MCG. Congratulations to Nick Riewoldt, sent off in style after the match, after playing his last ever game for St Kilda and in the AFL. And then the final game, well, it all came down to this one. The West Coast Eagles had a chance of making the top 8, and they made the most of it. They won and boosted their percentage, and as a result kicked Melbourne outside the top 8 on percentage. The final score, the West Coast Eagles 15-10, 100, defeated the Adelaide Crows 10-11, 71 in front of 39,367 at Domain. Of course, this was the final game for premiership points at Domain Stadium, of course, moving over to the new stadium next season. But what about the Eagles? Breathtaking stuff, and well, the Melbourne D's supporters would have been heartbroken after this result was booked in. So the West Coast Eagles just slot into the top 8 on 8th spot on percentage. Absolutely remarkable. It was a remarkable round, a remarkable season, really. One of the best we've seen for a while. Very close. The top 8 decided in the last round, which is probably what we expected at the mid-range stage of this season. Oh, what a fantastic year. Cannot wait for the finals, and in fact, let's now have a look at how these results have affected the final AFL ladder of 2017. So here is the final version of the 2017 AFL ladder, folks. The Adelaide Crows, minor premiers. They actually claim minor premiership on percentage, because Geelong have moved up to second thanks to that win against the GWS Giants on 62 points, level with the Crows. But as I mentioned, the Crows have a better percentage than the Cats. Richmond finished third after that big win against the Saints. The GWS Giants unfortunately dropped to fourth, but still make the top 4. So the Adelaide Crows will verse the GWS Giants in the first week of finals. The Geelong Cats will verse Richmond in the first week of the finals also. And then you have 5th Port Adelaide level with the Sydney Swans, who are 6 on points. They're both on 56 points each, with Port Adelaide having a better percentage. 7th is the Bombers, and then, as I mentioned before, the West Coast Eagles slotting to 8th on percentage, a better percentage than Melbourne, of course. The Sydney Swans, Essendon. I'll take that back. Essendon, the West Coast Eagles, and Melbourne all level on 48 points each. But Essendon having the better percentage than both those teams. The West Coast Eagles having a better percentage than Melbourne. So Port Adelaide will verse the West Coast Eagles in an elimination final at the Adelaide Oval on the first week of finals. And the other elimination final in the first week of the finals will be the Sydney Swans and Essendon. So some very, very big games there. They're all big games because they're finals. It's as simple as that. 9th is Melbourne. The 10th is the Western Bulldogs. 11th St Kilda. 12th Hawthorn. 13th Collingwood. 14th Fremantle. 15th North Melbourne. 16th is Carlton, and then 17th is the Gold Coast Suns, and then 18th is the Brisbane Lions, who finish in that wooden spoon position. So, well, it's been a very good season, a very good home and away season. The finals, I reckon, is going to be just a tad better. It's going to be fantastic. Cannot wait. The anticipation is growing on now to the stats wrap up. Okay, so let's go straight to the leading goal kickers, because that's probably the important award and the important stats out of any of those. And as I mentioned, Lance Franklin, 10 goals in the last round against the Blues. He actually wins the Coleman medal with 69 goals. Second is Josh Kennedy, who didn't really score a bag in the last round against the Adelaide Crows, second on 65. Third is Ben Brown, he kicked 7 against the Brisbane Lions on Saturday, third on 63 goals. Fourth is Joe Danaher on 62, and then fifth is Jack Riewoldt, who just sneaks into the top 5 there. He is on 50 goals. The leading disposals, no surprise that Tom Mitchell has won that on 787. Second is Matt Crouch on 726. You then have Dustin Martin in third on 667. Fourth is Rory Lard on 662. You then have fifth Clayton Oliver on 659. You would suspect that Clayton Oliver will win the D's best and fairest. The leading marks, Sam Doherty wins the leading marks on 199. Second is Jeremy Howe, jumping Jeremy Howe on 181. Third is Jeremy McGovern on 169. By the way, his brother, Mitch McGovern from the Adelaide Crows, actually signed a contract extension today. Fourth is Brendan Goddard on 162, and then fifth is Cade Simpson, also on 162. And then the leading tackles, Rory Sloane leads the tackles, wins the tackles on 176. Second is Brad Ebert on 165. Third is Jack Steele on 158. Fourth is Clayton Oliver on 152. And fifth is Dane Zorko on 147. He's from the Brisbane Lions, who's had a fantastic year. No doubt about that. So that is the final stats wrap-up for 2017. Congratulations to all those winners, especially Buddy Franklin. How good was that from Lance Franklin in the last round? 10 goals to his name against the Blues in round 23. He wins the Coleman once again. Okay, time now for my season ratings for all bottom 10 clubs. Something a little bit different here on Bev's Footy show. Of course, we can't ignore the 10 clubs who didn't make the top 8. Of course, the 8 clubs who did make the top 8, all the attention will be on them come finals. But I have to give my ratings for the clubs who didn't make the finals. Now, how this is going to work is I'm actually basing the rating on their wins and losses and whether it's better this year than last season. So this is completely my opinion. You can all disagree, you can all give your thoughts in the comments down below. This is just my opinion, and I'll explain why I've given the score in a little bit of depth as I go through each team. So I'm going to go through in the order that they finished on the ladder. So let's start with Melbourne, who finished just outside the top 8. We know that on percentage. They finished with 12 wins and 10 losses, which was better than last year. I've given them a high score of 7 out of 10, which is the highest score out of any of the 10 clubs who didn't make the finals. I believe that they have actually had a very good year this year. Putting the heartbreak aside a little bit, I think they've actually had a really good year. They've beaten top 8 sides. When they've been at their best, they've performed really, really well, and their best has actually been capable of actually beating the higher sides in the competition. What's let them down is their consistency. And also they're not meeting expectations and winning games that we expected them to win. So, for example, North Melbourne, they lost to twice. On paper, we expected them to beat North Melbourne. That's no offence to North Melbourne or anything, but Melbourne are clearly the better side than North Melbourne, but yet the Kangaroos beat them twice. They also lost, they had heavy losses to the Crows and the GWS Giants, which you can look back on that and say that probably contributes to their percentage right now. And of course, that game on Saturday in round 23 against Collingwood was a shocker, and we expected them to win that one, and they blew it. And in fact, that was really the sealer on their top 8 chances and not making top 8, even though Nathan Jones, I know, come out during the week and argued that that it didn't come down to that last game. It kind of did in a way. So, but I do agree that there was games throughout the season that has costed them to where they are now. But I still think they've had a good year this year, a better year than last year. I think this is going to be a good cause for them going forward to next season. I think they could definitely challenge for the higher top 8, maybe just below top 4, maybe even top 4. If they obviously this is going to burn with them throughout the pre-season, so I expect them to be a little bit higher next year and making the top 8. 10th is the Western Bulldogs, 11 wins, 11 losses, clearly not better than last season. We know that they won the grand final and then not even in the finals this season, which is just a shock. I've given them a 5 out of 10. I think their first half of the season was quite good. It was just their second half of the season where they started to fall away. Bailey Dale and McLean have been two really standout players. Of course, Bond and Pelly will win their best and fairest, I reckon. But what's really let them down this year, and what's been noticeable for me, and I've harped on this on After the Dogs Roar, my Western Bulldogs only show here on YouTube, is that their efficiency inside 50 has just been poor. They've had more inside 50s than opposition most weeks, and yet they haven't been able to win games. It's just a real shocking stat to look at. And also their backline as well has been an issue. We know that their backline has been completely reformed and different to last season. That's probably due to injuries, and of course Hamling went to Fremantle. They never really replaced Hamling, in my opinion. So look, I've given them a 5 out of 10. I don't think it's been a real bad year, but it's still been a bad year and a poor year because, well, if you make the grand final and then just bow out of the finals the next season, that is always going to be poor. So a 5 out of 10 for the Western Bulldogs. St Kilda finished 11th with 11 wins and 11 losses. Not better than last season. I think they had a lot more wins, or just by a couple actually, more wins last season. But I've given them a 5 out of 10 nonetheless because they did put themselves in a position to make the top 8 in various stages of the year. They did have a poor start to the season. I think that's what kind of let them down in a small way, although they did get it back midway through the season. They beat teams such as the GWS and Richmond in stages of the season. Of course, we know that they came out and absolutely blistered Richmond earlier in the midway through the season, I think it was. Of course, they versed Richmond in round 23, and then it was a different story in that. They've just been inconsistent this season, and that's what's let them down and hasn't put them inside the top 8. They had a chance to make the top 8, but they didn't take it. So I've given them a 5 out of 10. I think that's a reasonable score. 12th is Hawthorn, 10 wins, 1 draw, 11 losses. Not better than last season, it's no question about that. But I'm going to give them a 6 out of 10, a high score, because I acknowledge and really respect that Alistair Clarkson would have expected to make finals, but then he realised halfway through the season that okay, it's not going to be our year. We're not going to be able to make finals. So let's put our focus off the finals and put our focus more into the team and how he can improve this side to. It was like an early rebuilding stage, to be honest. Maybe that's a little bit kind of. Maybe a little bit harsh to say because I think they will be back up there next year and challenging for the top 8. But they had a really good second half to the season. It's no question about that. And that's why I've given them a 6 out of 10 because at one stage they even put themselves in a position to make the top 8. So a 6 out of 10 for me for Hawthorn. 13th is Collingwood, who just re-signed Nathan Buckley during the week. 9 wins, 1 draw, 12 losses. That 1 draw, by the way, was a disappointing result for them. They controlled the first half against the Adelaide Crows, and yet they only got a draw out of it, which was a bit poor. I've given them a 4 out of 10. I think they have fantastic midfield. which is going to be a real big asset for them moving forward. But their game style is terrible. We all know that, and they need some more kind of forward pressure, if you know what I mean. Their forward line's probably not structurally sound. So look, I think they've done the right thing in re-signing Nathan Buckley. I think that's a positive, and I think next year I'd be expecting them, if they have a good pre-season and do the right things in the draft and the trade period, I think they'll be up there next season, possibly challenging for the top 8, maybe just outside the top 8, and then moving forward, they might be starting to really build on something. So I think I read today that Cramery, they might be after Cramery, which I think might be a good pickup for them. Even though I'm a Western Bulldogs supporter, would love to keep Cramery. I think he might be a good pickup for them, because they need some more forward. Some more forwards, to be honest. Some more key forwards. If they don't have too many, and with Jesse White retiring and so forth, I think they need to, they need to do something to just improve their forward line a little bit, maybe even improve their back line as well. But they have a very good midfield. 14th is Fremantle, 8 wins and also 14 losses. Actually better than last season, which is very, very interesting. But I still think this season's been quite poor from their point of view. You can't go through a season and expect that it's been a positive one when you've been thrashed by 100 plus points 3 times during the season. That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable at all. I credit them for their first half efforts. I thought that they were quite impressive, especially after those couple of games where they didn't perform well. I think they came out and beat Melbourne, I think. So they did have a good first half of the season to some extent, but their second half of the season was quite poor. And it's going to be interesting to see what Ross Lyon does next season. Harley Bennell was a late positive for them, because obviously they signed him up a couple of years ago, and he only just played his first game, and I think him playing his first game is a positive in itself. So Fremantle gets a score of 3 out of 10. I think that's a reasonable score. 15th on the ladder was North Melbourne, 6 wins and 16 losses. Clearly not better than last season. Of course, they made the finals. In fact, had that perfect start to season 2016 with those consecutive wins, but this season's been a completely different story. We knew that it was going to be like this. Of course, they ditched a couple of old foes, and they were always going to be a rebuilding side this season. I've given them a 3 out of 10. I'm not sure if that's too harsh or not, but they at some points during the season they performed really well, but then at other points they weren't so good, and they were getting hammered in certain points. But look, Ben Brown's been a good success story, I reckon. He's had a very good season. I think 3 out of 10 is pretty reasonable. That's just my opinion. Let me know if you think differently. 16th on the ladder was Carlton, 6 wins and 16 losses. Not better than last year, but they're one of those teams that has to bounce down to bounce back up, if you know what I mean. I wanted to give them a 5 out of 10, but because of the fact that their losses and win ratio wasn't better this year than last season, then I've had to give them a 4.5 out of 10. 5 Rising Star nominees is just incredible. And look, they've got a very good young list. I think Liam Jones has been a positive for them going up in defence, and of course we know that they're working on the defence right now before they work on their forward line, which is something they need a bit of development in. So Carlton gets a 4.5 out of 10 for me. 17th is the Gold Coast Suns, who got 6 wins and 16 losses. Clearly not better than last season, and as a result, I've given them 1 out of 10, the lowest score. I was nearly going to give them a 0 out of 10, but I think with Mark Evans coming in, I think that's been a positive. They've just had a shocking year this year. Sacked coach, Gary Ablett wanting to leave even before the season. Thrashings, bad results. Going to China and playing that game against Port Adelaide and getting thrashed was just not good enough. Something needs to happen next season for them to be a good team. And in fact, it's going to be hard next season, because I think the first 6 games of their season next year, their home ground won't be available due to the Commonwealth Games. So it's going to be interesting to see the coach that they recruit, and whether that coach can make a difference or not. So yeah, very low score there from the Gold Coast Suns. They've been the poorest team of 2017. There's no question about that. And then 18th is the Brisbane Lions, who got 5 wins and 17 losses. Actually better than last year, even though they finished last on the ladder. They had a better year than last season in some regards. I've given them a 5 out of 10 because I think this year's been very positive. They've shown their potential at various stages this season, and I credit them for that. You know, Eric Hipwood's a very good player. Zorko, let's hope they can keep Rockcliffe. I'm not sure if he wants to go anywhere at the end of this season. McCluggage picked 2 last year. He's been very good. Was Worth picked 2. They are a side who I think will be challenging for the top 8 in the next couple of years, and Chris Fagan's done a very, very good job with this team, so I've given them a 5 out of 10. So that is my season ratings for all the bottom 10 clubs. Let me know if you agree, or if you don't agree, what's your rating for each of these clubs. So of course there's no AFL footy this weekend because of the newly integrated bye before the finals. It was introduced last season. The AFL has decided to keep it for this season. So week 1 of the finals will be not this weekend, but the next weekend. So I'll preview week 1 of the finals on next week's episode of Bev's Footy Show, and of course give you a heads up on the match information and so forth. So because there's a bye, I thought I'd give you a bit of a heads up on what's coming up during the bye, because there is still some footy and events to be watched and followed this week. So let's start with what's coming up on Wednesday, the 30th of August at 8:30 p.m. It's the Virgin All-Australian Awards at the Palace Theatre. The way you can watch it is on Fox Footy. In fact, I'm actually recording this episode on a Wednesday, so by the time this episode's up, the All-Australian Awards have probably already been announced. So I'll talk about the All-Australian team on next week's episode of Bev's Footy Show. Just thought I'd include it into the show this week anyway. Friday at 1:30 p.m. there is the NAB Rising Star Award. There's a few good chances, such as Sam Powell-Pepper and Andrew McGrath, who might take home the award. It's going to be interesting to see who wins it. Of course, you can watch it on Fox Footy from 1:30 p.m. That Friday night, of Friday the 1st of September at 7:50 p.m. is the traditional E.J. Whitten Legends game between Victoria and the All-Stars at Etihad Stadium. You can watch it on 7 and Fox Footy. Cannot wait for it. It is always a great night. I think they've done well with moving this to a Friday night, and in a weekend where there's no footy, because then people can sit down and enjoy it. It's supposed to be a bit of fun. Of course, it raises money, and also it features a lot of ex-AFL players and legends, champions. So looking forward to sitting down on Friday night and watching that match. It's always entertaining. And then Saturday night, there's some women's football, the AFL Women's State of Origin between Victoria and the Allies. This is going to be interesting, going to be ripping. You can watch it on Fox Footy and 7. It's at Etihad Stadium. As I mentioned, 7:40 p.m. It features all the best players from the first edition of the AFL Women's League. So make sure you get around it and watch it, and hopefully enjoy it as well. So that's what's coming up during the bye, but I cannot wait for week 1 of the finals to start. Like I mentioned, we'll be previewing week 1 of the finals on next week's episode of Bev's Footy Show. And that is it for this week's episode of Bev's Footy Show. Thank you very much for watching. Of course, don't forget to like, comment and share this video. Subscribe to keep up to date with a new episode of this every single week up until after the AFL Grand Final, which is not far away, I can tell you that. And of course, I do some other content on this channel as well, so check that content out if you want to. So once again, that is it for this week's episode, and until next week, enjoy the bye. Cannot wait for week 1 of the finals. Bye for now.